Last week, you read and studied civil law. This week, your topic is Chapter 7, criminal law. And we're going to talk a little bit about the differences of the two. First, we're going to look at the burden of proof. When you talk about civil law and responsibility in civil law, typically the burden is more likely than not, or that you're at approximately 51% responsibility in order to be held liable in a civil case. Criminal cases are very different because it is up to the prosecutor, the person working for the government, to bring this case and to prove beyond a reasonable doubt you're guilty. In criminal law, you do not have to prove you are innocent. You simply have to raise reasonable doubt as to your guilt. And this is a very big thing. And a lot of times people misunderstand this. Defendants misunderstand this when they come out of court after they may have won a criminal trial and they say, I'm innocent. They very well may be innocent. However, that isn't what the court ruled. The court found them not guilty, which is a very small difference, but a very important difference, especially when you are a defense lawyer trying to help your client. The job isn't to prove, like I said again, their innocence. It is simply to put holes in the prosecution's case so that a jury goes back into the jury room and when deliberating, they have reasonable doubt as to whether or not someone committed the crime. If any of you are old enough to have watched the O.J. Simpson trial or saw the Netflix on it a few years ago, this was something that became famous in O.J. Simpson's case. You look at the line when they were talking about him trying on the glove. If it does not fit, you must acquit. And this is what the defense does. The prosecutor presented a piece of evidence and said, hey, this glove was worn by the murderer. The person who committed this crime wore this glove. And that was there beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense lawyers asked O.J. Simpson to try on the glove. Magically, his hand had swollen up a little bit or was bigger than normal, or in the manner he tried it on, it didn't fit, or possibly it just didn't fit him. Who knows? He may not have ever worn that glove before that day. However, in that process, in that example, they didn't prove OJ's innocent. They simply proved the evidence being provided by the prosecutor is doubtful as to its veracity, as to its truth. So because of that, O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. He went on to write a book as to, had he been the killer, how he would have done it. But I digress. So anyways, going more into criminal law. Another big difference between criminal law and civil law is the number of jurors that have to agree in order for a verdict to take place, for there not to be a hung jury, which means they're unable to decide. In civil cases, typically that's a majority of the jurors. Some states it's a 3/4 majority, some states it's just a simple majority of the jurors. In criminal cases, it is almost always, and in Arizona, almost always, where it has to be a unanimous verdict. That means all 6 or 12 jurors have to agree with the finding as to whether they are guilty or not guilty. If all the jurors cannot agree in a criminal case, that will be what's called a hung jury, where the prosecutor will then have to decide, do they want to bring these charges again, try this case again? Essentially, the first case would just get thrown out as if it never happened. And they would go through this process a second time if the prosecutor did decide. Now, with criminal cases, we also want to go over a couple things, and then I'll stop this video and we'll do another one. Is the two parts of a criminal act. One is the actual act itself, where you are doing something. You are robbing a bank. You are lighting a house on fire. You are assaulting somebody. You are committing check fraud. You are tampering with someone's computer. Whatever that act may be, it is an act, something you physically do. Now, you have to do that, but along with that, you have to have a wrongful mental state. And what that means, and this is the more important one of the two parts, because the act is pretty much self-sufficient. And excuse me, before we get out of the acting issue, simply not knowing something is a crime is not acting on it. So, like, if you didn't know jaywalking was a crime and you walked across the middle of 59th Avenue here by campus, you were still committing a criminal act. This is a very minor crime, typically a ticketed offense, but it is a wrongdoing. And even though you didn't know jaywalking was wrong, you can still be responsible for that. Now, the mental state of mind, that mental state is a big thing. Again, it's not the knowing of the crime that makes this or breaks this. It's knowing or having the ability to know right from wrong. Are you doing something that is potentially bad? Think about this in the sense, an example I often use is, I have a cousin who has Down syndrome, and he loves to drive, and he's a very good driver. If I went to him and said, hey, we're going to go to Mexico for a week, so pack a bag, and you and I are going to travel to Mexico. He gets very excited. He says, okay. He packs his bag. We get in his car. I say, let's run to the bank real quick first, because I need to get some money for our trip. We pull up in front of the bank. He's waiting on the front. I say, leave the car running. I go into the bank with a duffel bag. I come running out of the bank, and I say, let's get on our way to Mexico. Let's see how fast you can get there. Somewhere down around Rocky Point, right before we cross the border to go into Mexico, we get pulled over by the police. I'm going to get arrested for robbing the bank. What is my cousin going to be arrested for? Is he an accessory? Did he have the mental state to know what was happening? If I told him absolutely nothing about what was going on, did he have that wrongful mental state? And in this case, and in most cases, that answer is no. Now, some of you may be thinking to yourself, well, shoot, I've seen people get drunk enough where they don't know right from wrong, and they don't have the mental state to know going out and drinking and driving is a bad thing. So why do those people get punished? Well, it's because they choose to drink that much. No one sat there, tied them down, poured alcohol down their throat, and forced them to drink. So having the mental state to know what you're entering into is that second part of what calls a criminal act. So we'll stop this video here. I will continue with another video, so these aren't too long, and I will talk to you all soon.